Welcome in to the Husker247 Postgame Show. Nebraska losers of a 13-10 Black Friday game against Iowa that looked absolutely as familiar as you might remember from such years as 2023. What do we got in there? 2019. Similarities to games like 2020 or 2021. A Nebraska team that failed to take advantage of opportunity after opportunity early in the game, a defense that allowed one big play, and a special teams that was just a dumpster fire for the most part on Friday. Brian, how was the view from the press box and then the field level?
Yeah, it reminded me of the Simpsons character, Troy McClure, as you're talking. You may recognize me from such... Yeah.
You might remember me from such films as...
Yeah, that's what it was. I mean, it's like an unbelievable game statistically that Nebraska lost, and yet it's predictable. You know, like when Drew Stevens for Iowa was lining up for the 53-yard kick, Brunson and I are down behind the other end zone, freezing, and we're like, of course he's going to make it. I mean, you just like knew he'd make it, just like you knew that Minnesota kicker was going to make it to open the season a year ago. Nebraska gives up 5 first downs on defense and had one bad play. Really, there are maybe 2 or 3 good plays for Iowa throughout the game. I mean, but one bad play by Nebraska's defense where actually they're over exuberance in a way. Ty Robinson came firing in to try to help out, and he actually, I think it was John Bullock maybe or somebody, but there's 2 guys sort of there, pushed him off the tackle, and should have been a 10-yard gain at most, turns into 72 yards. Iowa had 65 yards of offense going into that play, into the fourth quarter, and no signs of life. And Matt Rule said he told them at halftime 3 things. You got to make the tackles. So they blew it on that one. No big special teams, meltdowns and win turnovers. And special teams, unfortunately, we can get right into. They crossed off 2 of those things they couldn't do by themselves by having mishaps, and one of them was a turnover.
Obviously, coming off of a game like this, it feels like it's a question that's just pointed in a very easy answer. But I do want you to think back. Can you think of a worse Nebraska special teams unit than the 2024 Huskers put out there for the entirety of a regular season? Individual games, sure, but week in and week out, they had issues all year long. And then you finally get into this game where you take on a team like Iowa that is good at every part of special teams. It's their identity. It's absolutely who they are. And it just felt like this colossal mismatch was just exposed in the third phase. And even then, it still shouldn't have affected Nebraska to the point where they would lose this game. And yet here we are talking about Nebraska losing this game.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it's hard for me on the spot to think of all the
right. Yeah.
But tonight, I mean, we've seen these bad snaps all year.
Yep.
And against Purdue, you can get away with it. But we knew then that if that popped up in a big moment in a game like this, it's going to take away a win. And that's what it did. I mean, honestly, the 2 snaps prior to that were not very good either, on the extra point and field goal. And, I'm not going to put that on John Hole. I mean, that's a tough deal when your rhythm is completely off. And Buschini actually did a heck of a job just to get the ball placed down somewhat. You just can't have that, at this level, because the other side is not going to have that lack of execution in such a basic part. And then, on the botched punt, I think probably IGC has to wear that one a little bit. Whether he called poison or not, he did it at the last moment. If he did, as people can read the story, we have it on our site about everything Rule said about it. But it's very hard for those other guys when they think their guy's flying in to make the catch, and then he dives out at the last second to know if he hit it or not. I have a hard time blaming Vincent Shavers there.
Yeah, I don't either.
For trying to, like, I actually thought it hit him too. Schaefer, I thought it was a live ball. It was a very close call. But yeah, that just the one thing you're sitting up in the press box, you're watching it on TV and you're saying, just don't give them free points and you got this thing. And what do? They gave him some free points.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is the defense comes right out. And I can't speak for you, Brian, but I didn't think Iowa was scoring a touchdown. And they got that stop. Like, it's remarkable that even when the foot has been blown off, they were still playing great. I tweeted this out. I know that you feel similar because you and Brunts have talked about it the lead up to senior day and this game. I mean, Ty Robinson played his ass off tonight. Yeah. He was phenomenal. John Bullock, outside of, he's going to think about that one play with Caleb Johnson because he was the guy that could have just either wrestled him out of bounds or kind of got stood up there. He's one of the missed tackles. John Bullock was phenomenal again. These guys were terrific for Nebraska. And they weren't alone. I mean, Riley Van Poppel was great in moments, and James Williams was big in pass rush, and the defense plays so well. And they're going home with a loss. I can't even begin to pull the strands of all the different things that happened in this game where I'm just puzzled. So I think it's probably easier to just, get your assessment. What did Matt Rule have to say? How did he size up that game in the end? And where does this team sort of find itself? You have the collective emotional release of getting the bowl win. You're up 10-0 against Iowa. You're kind of on cruise control, and you can't finish the damn game. And not only that, they look like they've never had to run a 2-minute drill every damn time they have to go down and try to score at the end of the game. It's unbelievably bad. So what did Matt Rule have to say and just kind of walk us through the different parts of it?
Yeah, I mean, he said, here's the quote. He said, credit to them. They've won a long time. They believe they make the plays all the way to the very end. We've got to catch them. We've got to catch them. We haven't caught them yet in terms of finding ways to finish games. That was a big theme of it. 2 or 3 of the questions were spent on just the special teams mishaps, which obviously he was really disappointed by.
Could he be surprised by it?
I don't know that he's surprised. I think he thought they were maybe trending up, and there was a hope, I think, going into this game that they could maybe break even, but they didn't do it. And it wasn't just those were the 2 major blemishes we discussed.
Yeah, they couldn't cover a punt. They couldn't, the first kickoff they had after scoring. I mean, they allow Iowa to get to the other. They lost field position in a lot of different ways. Brian Buschini has to be a better punter. I mean, if he has NFL aspirations, he's not good enough to play on Sunday. And I know that sounds really unfair, and he's had some monster games at times this year. But Iowa's punter hit a 54-yarder in that cold weather to flip the field and put Nebraska at the 19-yard line. Nebraska's having punts that barely get inside the 20. Now, Buschini had 1 punt that got inside the 10. It just astounds me that Nebraska just cannot do the simple and easy sometimes.
Yeah. And then Iowa, I mean, Iowa did have 1 special teams near meltdown, and they got away with it. Rule was told that the replay had looked at it, and they said it was, I guess, all right, that he didn't propel the ball into the end zone. I didn't see it enough to know if it was a good call or bad call, but I was surprised it wasn't looked at a little longer, I guess. Yeah. But nonetheless, the bottom line is Nebraska had plenty of opportunities. And then I'm not going to say a bad word about the defense. They made 1 bad play. It's the special teams, and the offense is just, they had a lot of opportunities in this game, and they did not capitalize. And you could start from the bat. They had the play they wanted with Jalen Lloyd that we always talk about. That could have been like that 60-yard play right off the bat. Missed it. There was a play to Fatoni that missed early that killed a drive. And then the play that went through Nair's hands. 2nd and 1. They had Iowa licked on the play. It was it was going to be either 1st and goal inside the 10 if Iowa tracked him down there, or a touchdown, and I would have guessed a touchdown. So I mean, that would have made it 17-10 with 6 minutes left if you catch the ball and run the 40 yards. And I have a hard time believing Iowa gets another big play on offense to tie it. So, I mean, special teams certainly might wear the brunt of it, but offensive execution and just like failing in those moments that were right there to be grabbed has to be right alongside it.
Yeah, the inability to seize a moment is such a theme for this Nebraska organization. I mean, these 2 straight years, you're I can't do the math, 11-13 in across 2 seasons, with an untold amount of losses where the other team walks off the field on a field goal because you either can't get the stop, you can't make the play. Whether it's offense, defense, or special teams, they just aren't making enough plays. They aren't making enough winning plays. They aren't finishing games. They're not finishing drives. It's just, there's a lot in there. One of the things, and I'm just throwing random stuff out there, so I apologize because there's no real stream of, working towards anything here. But one of the things that surprised me is how much they really focused trying to go horizontal on Friday. Like they kept trying to work the edge of the field, and I don't understand the decision to run a reverse with Carter Nelson. Yeah, I don't understand. I get dump off passes to Emmett Johnson when everything's covered downfield. Designing passes to him 4 yards in the backfield, and then he has to fight through 2 defenders just to get a yard or 2. It just felt like they really struggled horizontally, and a lot of their best stuff was when they attacked vertically. It just seemed like a little bit of a misfire with whatever the game plan was there. And then that Carter Nelson play, I understand you're trying to do something to catch him by surprise, and you're trying to put the ball in a guy's hands, but man, that backfired in a big way. You're in plus territory. You need at least 5 to 7 yards to have a real field goal attempt, and that just murdered the drive.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of what Holgorsen has brought to this offense, but I felt like on that particular sequence, obviously hindsight 2020, all that, but yeah, it did feel like a strange call for a guy who hasn't touched the ball a lot in that particular moment on sort of a gimmicky play. I'm sure they wouldn't call it that, but it was 2nd and 7 on the 39. You lose a yard, and it did kind of just throw off the whole drive that felt like it had momentum. That was also the driver. Nair should have had a touchdown already like 3 plays before it. Nonetheless, you were kind of working through that, and it did feel like it was possible Nebraska could go win the game right there, and that was a big play that, you're right, it backfired. There's no way to spin it. And that was sort of the story for the offense. They couldn't finish drives. Now, that's a tough defense they're going against that has made a living for decades on bending but not breaking, and so you kind of expect they're going to win a few like that. But still, Nebraska left some points on the table. And the stats beyond some of the ones we mentioned at the top, Iowa's 0 of 10 on 3rd down. Nebraska was 8 of 17. You look at rushing yards. What did Caleb Johnson have?
48 or 49.
They did a great job. One play. They did a magnificent job on him in the one play of the screen pass. But it's there have been some weird losses in this series and weird losses in Husker football. This one, it feels like we say this a lot, but this one definitely, statistically, I think is the weirdest loss Nebraska's taken of all these losses, because it's just so bizarre.
Yeah, I think in the moment, this loss feels 10 times worse than most losses, because you're now at the end of season 2. You followed up the sort of euphoric breaking of the streak of not being able to go to a bowl game with a lead against Iowa. You couldn't finish the game. you get these bowl practices. You have things to be excited about. Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney. There's some good young players on this team. But, man, there are a ton of questions about this operation, and they can't get answered anytime soon. And I don't think they're going to be answered in Nashville or Charlotte or New York City, wherever Nebraska is ending up. It's tough. It's hard for me to call this year progress or success for Nebraska football. And that seems overly doomsdayish, but that's sort of where I'm at with it. What about you?
Well, it's a big month. I mean, a big month is ahead, and there's going to be coming and going of personnel, I'm sure, and we'll see what they do with the staff. And obviously the Holgorsen question's big. I kind of, if I had to guess right now, would think maybe it's the Music City Bowl. I mean, that's a part of this too. I know the ReliaQuest Bowl, formerly the Outback Bowl, isn't everything to people, but that's a nice bowl. I mean, that's like kind of a
good cap to your season.
January 1st type bowl, and it's right there to be had. And I feel like Nebraska let that slip through its fingers, and they'll be excited to go play another game and all that stuff. And they need to make it a deal where a lot of young guys get reps and stuff, and you really have to build toward 25 with it. They're shutting the lights off on me, but
BC After Dark.
It's a fitting way to end it up, really.
Well, we'll get you out of there before they lock you in that godforsaken stadium. So for Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker247. We have plenty of coverage at Husker247.com. We'll have plenty of more coverage as things go here throughout the weekend. Brian alluded to it, big month ahead. You have signing day on Wednesday. You transfer portal opening on December 9th. Husker247 is going to have all the coverage you want and need, and we're going to do it with the lights on because that's how things work in the state of Nebraska. Can't speak for Iowa, but hey, they won. They can do whatever they want. So get to Husker247. We'll have more Husker247 content. Sunday side session will be on Saturday morning. That'll return on Saturday. It's almost Saturday right now. If you're listening to this, have a great rest of your night, and we'll catch you later.